I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should it be? Why should he?
Yeah, welcome along to Thursday night's football show. Richie McCormack here with you, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined in studio for the duration by Dan McDonnell, who's busy getting and breaking stories live on air as we speak, such as his high-grade journalism. What have you just broken to the world now, Dan?
I'm just doing some... there's a lot of League of Ireland transfer stories as well with Richie, as you're probably well aware.
I've told you not to go on about these because far too many of them make me sad.
Oh, well, there's no sadness here for Bose, and these ones more than Pat's, not just Dara Burns. They're a very exciting young winger who... It's not... Hibs are not just after Johnny Kenny from Sligo Rovers, who was spotted in the director's box at their game on Tuesday with his dad, also named Johnny Kenny, ex-Sligo Rovers winger. But they're also looking at Dara Burns as well from St. Pat's, who I think is a really, really good prospect. Yeah. So I just popping that story out there as we speak.
Yeah. Kenny may have caught a lot of people's eyes actually because he was one of the star performers for Sligo, I guess.
Everyone loves a striker as well. I mean, this is the thing, like... I mean, throughout Irish football, like the search for that elusive front man is there. I mean, everyone at all levels is always looking for a striker, and he's someone who's such a natural. People who have seen him this season, just the way he plays, sort of fearless.
Is he an out and out, or does he play kind of?
He's played on the. He's played like in the sort of a front four. He's actually played off the right on a couple of occasions that I've seen him, but in some respects, I would, and I actually could be wrong here, but I think it would probably the availability of other personnel might have dictated that. I think he's probably more of a natural out-and-out striker, I think, but it depends how teams play, and then going to different levels can be an adjustment. But we'll see what happens. Like he has a release clause in his contract, so it's quite clear probably that he will go, because it's not just Hibs, it's Celtic as well and other clubs. Burns might be a little bit more negotiating to do to see what happens. He doesn't have any such clause, so we'll see what happens there. He's a good player though.
Bit of a the Hibs situation's in flux because obviously they're going through a managerial change as well, I think, at the minute.
They're managerless at the moment, yeah. I think what's more significant here as a broader point is it's the interest that Scottish clubs now have in the League of Ireland.
Very keen.
And I think the success story that is Jamie McGrath probably helps, but also Conor McCarthy. Liam Scales has now gone over and is getting his feet under the table a bit at Celtic, and it's probably a good bridge of a league for some players. We've seen probably players from the league go to the Championship in England and have found it hard, whereas I think Scotland is not lads aren't getting rich going to Scotland, but it's a better league. It's a more stable sort of industry, and an industry exists there, and it's a good shop window, so it can really open doors for you. Like someone like Jamie McGrath will go from St Mirren to probably a Championship club in January. Would it have been harder for him to go there from Dundalk, even if he was good enough? Probably, yeah, probably. So that's the thing, and probably playing better games on a more regular basis. I think the real problem with the league, and like we're both League of Ireland fans, I think just the biggest problem sometimes for promising players, they don't have the consistency of games every week. That you'll have some very good games, but probably on other weeks maybe not being tested enough, particularly if you're in a very strong team here. And that's obviously something that you want to see address, and hope that the sort of the base level moves up. I think Dan Cleary from Dundalk is going to St Johnstone, so it's a popular route for sure.
Ross Tierney's already gone to
Ross Tierney, yeah, of course, another one, 3.5 year contract as well, which is a statement of belief in him as well too.
There's probably a political point to be made here as well, because we've made a lot of the fact that Brexit's going to have a massive impact on the amount of players that stay here, because they won't necessarily have the pathways open to them in England. Fast forward 5-6 years down the line, maybe getting ahead of myself somewhat, Scottish independence, rejoin the EU, suddenly Scotland's a far more...
Oh God, yeah, you're taking the geopolitical sort of angles here. I like this.
4D chess, Dan.
So Scottish independence means we export our players to 16 again, just to Scotland.
Exactly.
I'm not sure. Well, I mean, is that a negative for Scottish independance now? Like, I don't know.
Probably. We'll probably find ourselves siding with the Tories in this one. For the good of the league.
This is uncomfortable. Yeah. How far can your love or demand for a better industry here, how far will you take it? So, Scotland, listen, you have your claims for independence, but really, you know, and when we think about it, do you really want to take the financial risk of leaving Westminster? Meanwhile, let's keep our promising players for 2 more years.
I want to see Micheál Martin have that discussion with Nicola Sturgeon, saying, as much as I'd like to support your bid for Scottish sovereignty and to rejoin the EU, I really fear how this might affect Cork City's under-17s.
Have you considered all the angles here? Are you really sure about this? Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. But I think as well, like what you're seeing, I mean, this is a sort of with the whole Brexit thing and what is going to change over the next couple of years, presuming there's no dramatic political changes and the breakup of the United Kingdom.
Give it a couple of weeks.
Give it a couple of weeks. Who knows? See how many more Christmas parties come out. But like, I think like we're so used to sort of the mass departure of players at 15, 16, a pretty standard thing that would happen and often not reported because there'd be so many of them going. Whereas now you're probably seeing players who'll gain a little bit more name recognition by playing in the League of Ireland first team level, but then when they hit 18, a lot of them will probably go, you know, and when they pass their 18th birthday. So there'll be more transfer talk about them, but it also means that they go in as first team players or longer term contract players where they go. Like they're generally there's a difference between going over at 16 and going as sort of as a scholar or going into the youth section as opposed to going to 18. Pretty obvious sort of thing, like anything in life, like, you know, the older you are, generally, you know, you've got a better deal.
But there's a bigger churn, let's say, of the 14, 15, 16 year olds than there will be if you're going over 18, 19 and you're landing in a Premier League or a championship teams under 23s.
Yeah, exactly. And people who will be listening to this who will be worried about this situation would rightly point out, going at 18, 19, would there be sort of elite clubs in England who would think there's too much work to do with players at that stage and they'd still want to be taking them at 16 to hone them into the, I don't know, Andrea Mobadele or players that are ready for Premier League at 18, and that's part of what needs to be done here, is to get things considerably better at home so that the players are, you know, when they hit 18, you know, are hopefully of a similar standard to some of the 18-year-olds we have at the moment who went over at 16 into really good setups. And that's obviously going to be the challenge that we do actually, ironically enough. Okay, you have someone like Gavin Bazun who ticks both boxes because he was in the League of Ireland for a while, but the likes of Nathan Collins and Jason Knight and Amoba Badele and a couple of others who were ready to play first team at 17, 18, 19, will our players produce solely through the game here at home? Could they go over at 18 and go straight into the first team at sort of a championship level or even Premier League like some of those? That's going to be hard, and that's part of the broader concerns that people would have.
Evan Ferguson finds himself knocking at the door pretty quickly, though.
Well, he does, yeah. Now he again was able to go over that small bit earlier because of I think his mother being English. So that was basically how there was a slight loophole. Well, not a loophole, it's a fact. You know. But I mean, yeah, like Evan Ferguson is a very, very exciting player, and there's also a young Andrew Moore, and I would mention there as well, who went from Bray, who's very talented, more of a playmaker. But Evan Ferguson, on the bench for the first team last night, and certainly a real talent who. But again, you know, you see the struggles of Aaron Connolly and other people, and you think you have to caution yourself against getting carried away.
I think we had that point made during the news round last night. Ferguson was on the bench, obviously against for Brighton last night against Wolves, and Aaron Connolly got his first start of the season and was hooked after an hour because again it was another flat performance of nothing for Aaron Connolly, and you just go, Evan, see him? That he was you know. Yeah.
I think there would be a feeling that maybe there might be two different sort of personality types there, but then you never know really what happens when someone reaches that next level. But I think, you know, you hear a lot of good things about Evan Ferguson, you know, and in terms of even probably maybe some of those experiences he got, which were controversial, you know, when he was in the Bows first team dressing room at 14 playing against Chelsea, you know, but then even at 15 being around Bows more regularly and, you know, seeing the other side of the game, you know, probably seeing older pros who maybe, you know, they're not exactly loaded or whatever, you know, and it gives you but would have a certain sort of grounding, and I think that Bo's dressing room would be spoken about positively in terms of what type of environment it is. So, you know, maybe that was a great start for him, actually. And that's the glass half full side of the equation here that I'm talking about, that maybe some of the better young ones who now have to stay at home, but by being around first teams earlier, for some of them it'll be a great thing for them. Now obviously for other later developers you could argue the toss around that, but even someone like James Abankwah, like 17, who now has the experience of playing in front of 37,000 people in an FAI Cup final, very possible. Like, he was someone who I think within Dublin schoolboy scene even was a bit of a later developer, but might still have gone at 16 and never experienced anything like that, you know, early in his life. So that's the two sides
and
of it.
Physically looks like he's about 26 as well.
Yeah, but again, speaking to people who know the scene very well, he's come on a hell of a lot apparently. He wouldn't have been necessarily a sort of a in the top ones that would have been spoken about a couple of years ago, but certainly going a very good way now. We'll be hearing his name again soon, that's for sure.
We've had a couple of goals in the Premier League, just to let you know. Chelsea took the lead at home to Everton in the past few moments. It was a goal set up by Reece James and finished off by Mason Mount with 20 minutes to go, but that lead lasted just 4 minutes. Jared Braithwaite has netted for Everton to equalise for them. So Chelsea 1, Everton 1 is the latest from Stamford Bridge. There's a quarter of an hour to go in that match. There's half an hour to go at Anfield, where it remains Liverpool 2, Newcastle 1. Newcastle have been finding their way back into this game, and I think Liverpool, to a degree, not necessarily have stepped back, but they've certainly let Newcastle get a foothold in this second half, as they had done towards the end of the first, and threatening to, I guess, bring themselves back level at Anfield. John Joe Shelby finds himself in the ball. He's the man who put Newcastle in front. Liverpool equalised through Diogo Jota rather controversially, because Newcastle thought they should have had a free, or at least the play should have been stopped in the lead up to that goal, and 4 minutes later Mo Salah made it 2-1. Dan, we had the Nations League draw earlier on. This is obviously going to inform a lot of what goes on as regards Stephen Kenny and how he fares over the next while. Before we get into that draw, the news came out yesterday morning that it looks like the contract is going to be forthcoming for Stephen Kenny. Well,
I have to be honest, like, I've never particularly doubted that. You know, I think there's been an ongoing, I don't think, actually, do you know what, I'm not even sure if this one really ticks the saga box in terms of a contract. I think, like, you can have, we've had contract sagas and stuff. I think it's more
a dialogue,
like, you know, a dialogue. I mean, in my own, I can only talk about what I've probably reported myself, but like, I've always picked up strong vibes that Kenny would be that, while there's definitely been ongoing discussions and with different opinions exist on a board, which there should be, you know, they shouldn't all just be sort of like nodding dogs who all hold the same view. I mean, we've had that.
I think we had that.
We've done that, been there, done that. I've always got the sense personally that the prevailing view would be that he would get a contract to take in the Euros, because anything else that would be sort of a short-term fudge would not send out any message of confidence or certainty, and would be, you know, not really a solution, and wouldn't be the preference, I think, of probably some of the more influential figures on the board. Now, we'll see what's announced and what comes out in due course, but I've certainly never deviated from that line, and I can be wrong with that. So a lot of the, maybe, you know, well, this has been debated and this is that, I think it's maybe added twists and turns that I'm not really sure in actuality have really been there. You know, sort of, well, what does this statement here mean and what does that statement here mean and all of that. I know I would have sort of,
should they put it, that last one I think is the one that rose confusion, because it was essentially, we have discussed the matter and we're going to discuss it further.
Well, the only thing about that though was, and I would say probably in their defence, that, like, yeah, there was a big thing made at the start of the year about that the board meeting on November the 29th, as it was, would be key. But if you're going to be true to that it would be debated at the board meeting, you weren't going to go to the board meeting with the negotiations already done, signed and sealed, and you sign off on this, which again would have been a bit of an old, like, here's the deal we've agreed before we get to the boardroom table. So actually, and I probably at some stage would have alluded to the fact, his future will be settled in November, but actually as it went on, I was like, well, no, that actually won't be the case. Right. Like the discussion will take place with the review, and that will lead to what will lead to a negotiation. And I think as well, something that probably hasn't always got the mention, but I think it's significant here as well, that it's not just Stephen Kenny's contract you're talking about here as well.
On different timelines.
You have the other members of the backroom team as well who come in at different times, at different intervals. And okay, with Stephen Kenny, like, there's obviously, I don't think there's going to be any opposition from him, you know, to an extended contract. But clearly, if you're talking to people who have day jobs with Premier League clubs and you want to put them on the same sort of length, probably involves a bit of work even to get to nail down all of that and that commitment. And there's a degree of speculation with me saying that, but I think, you know, in some ways, like, it's probably more of an educated guess as well too around that I think that's definitely, from what I gather, is something that they want to do. But that all isn't going to be signed and sealed and done in a short space of time. Now, I did feel again that, you know, there was a sense that they wanted this done maybe, you know, prior to Christmas, maybe even prior to that draw, and we have got to the draw date and there's been no say announcement, so we'll see. But I think, you know, when that statement was put out that night for the FAI, the one you refer to, basically the statement that confirmed a meeting took place. You know, the news on the meeting is there was a meeting. People, what does this mean? Is this bad? I never would have taken it as bad. I think it'll be resolved with Stephen Kenny with a contract to the Euros, but you know, with, you know, as would be standard with a lot of proper contracts, probably some kind of something factored in that if you did need to sort of change, that you would be prepared for that eventuality, as opposed to being liable for full whack, which again is a mistake that the FAI have made in the past.
I think with that last statement, it was so blank that people projected whatever their own thoughts were about the situation.
100%, yeah. I think there's probably an element of that, and there's at times I think there's been an element of that about a lot of this process. You know, like that
they've been so process oriented and so open.
You can find that well, this maybe means this and this maybe means that, and I'm not just so sure that there's that level of flip-flopping has really been replicated in the decision-making sort of boardroom. While again, as I said, there would be different views and more conservative views about handing out the contract, which I think you have to respect. Like, you know, that again, you don't want a discussion about a contract to be 2 minutes long and everyone going great. Like, that's fine. People need to put out different ideas and opinions, but I've certainly always been left with the impression that the most likely scenario would be the extension to take in the Euros, and I've never really deviated from that, but who knows?
Yeah.
Could be wrong.
You mentioned that Nations League draw today. For those who missed out on it, Ireland will play Ukraine, Scotland and Armenia. We were going through the groups earlier on. As third seeds, you look at the other groups that are in League B, and there doesn't seem to be a preferable group. So if you were to take us out of the one we're in and swap us with somebody else, they all kind of seem pretty even.
They have the other one. Who did Iceland end up with?
Iceland ended up with Russia, Israel and Albania. So Israel are the third seeds there.
Okay.
So, and then group 3 we've got Bosnia, Finland, Romania, Montenegro. Group 4, just for completion's sake, Sweden, Norway, Serbia and Slovenia. So,
but I think you'd want that Bosnia, Finland, Montenegro group. For me, like, the optimum group was Iceland. Very much so. Iceland were by far the team you wanted in it.
They're a world away from
gone off
2016.
Yeah, they finished behind Armenia in the World Cup group, and there's been a sort of stories there around the behaviour. We've covered it on the show before, like sort of almost like a sort of a Me Too style sort of movement around the football team there. That's, you know, that the people aren't even going to their games anymore. So it's sort of remarkable how deep that has struck them. So to me, like, I did a preview of the draw this morning, and to me the whole difficulty of the group was going to be determined by the top seed that you got. And for me it was like, if your group has Ukraine and Sweden in it, it's tough, and if it has Iceland and Bosnia, it's kinder. I think that pot 2 with Scotland, Finland, Russia and Norway, everyone in that group was reasonably difficult. Pot 4, probably Armenia is actually one of the better options from that. Albania would have been tough. So it was like Iceland and Albania are in the same group, so that would have been a sort of a trade-off there. But I think it's challenging. I do think it's I don't think it's a group that Stephen Kenny, as much as he's spoken about it subsequently and you know, is still speaking optimistically about the prospects of winning it, but I think he would have been more bullish with a different combination. I think it's challenging. Yeah, I do. I think Scotland and Ukraine are both we're both in the last Euros and are both in World Cup playoffs, which reflect that they finished second in their groups and they've been more competitive than Ireland were in their group, to be fair. So I think it's a tough one, but it's going to be a weird campaign as well. Like Scotland and Ukraine play each other in the World Cup playoff in March, so they're having that bit of Ireland-Denmark sort of like we're sick with it.
Yeah.
So when it comes around to the Nations League games, and we'll find out the order of the games tomorrow, and even that can be significant too. Like going to Armenia away at the start of it versus going to the end of it would be two very different sort of scenarios on paper.
Yeah, and again, without wanting to bring geopolitical forces into it, like Ukraine could find itself in a very awkward position in the new year, judging by just the news that's out there, which is
yeah. So like you play them in some neutral venue, like, or something. Mainz, yeah.
Mainz.
Like, this is the thing. I mean, Ireland. I mean, talk about Ireland getting energised by the Scottish independence debate. Of course, we did opportunistically get very torn into the South Ossetia thing back in 2008. It was like, maybe there's something here for us, and the Georgians didn't really like that. They didn't take too kindly to that, and it maybe helped to fire up Georgia for some of those subsequent battles where they caused quite a few problems for Ireland. So you're going to have to be careful here.
Yeah.
And Armenia, of course, have their own. When Ireland was lost the head over Thierry Henry in 2009,
they had more of a cause.
2
than we
years
had, yeah.
later, it was Simon Cox, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the was it a handball outside the box and a player got sent off, or it was a questionable decision? And that was Armenia's almost their best ever campaign. Like, they really were right
Finished
in there.
third, I think.
They finished. I think they finished ahead of Slovakia.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, that Keith Fahey goal in Yerevan, the start of the campaign, was like really, really important come the end of it. But no, I know you're saying with the Ukraine situation, and definitely probably ticks the criteria for tough place to go at the moment. Like the tough place to go. Everyone everywhere that's far away is described as a tough place to go, and actually sometimes it's not. Like Baku was a tough place to go, and then you get to the stadium and it's a big cavernous stadium and there's no one in it apart from a load of security guards around the pitch in a really weird formation, protecting nobody. And
Taking their football team now.
Heavily securitised place now, Baku, but there wasn't actually a tough place to go apart from the trip, maybe a bit of jet lag.
It's a long slog.
Ukraine, I think, to be fair, would tick the box of tough place to go.
Yeah.
And but again, like, that maybe can be defined by if they're in a World Cup year, if they somehow get through the playoff, does the Nations League become a real sort of after the Lord Mayor show thing for them, and that's probably the good side of the equation for Ireland, that really Stephen Kenny's whole year is built around these games in June, September, whereas really Scotland and Ukraine, their year could be completely determined by what happens in March. But it is going to be weird because there's going to be 4 games in June, like almost like a major tournament in terms of the length of time the team will have together and the sort of volume of games. So there's a lot focusing around who's fit, available, healthy, and sort of in the mood at that point. And at the end of a season, which could be we'll probably talk about the COVID situation, who knows what type of season that's going to be and what way it's going to work out. There's a lot of sort of factors that could be taken into it, and maybe the likes of Scotland, they have really elite players like sort of the Robertson and
Tominay and Kieran Tierney,
but actually could they have had a harder season than some of the Irish lads in the Championship would be finished up a lot earlier? These are the little factors that come into it.
There's Ralph Rangnick and Mikel Arteta put the squeeze on these players and say, I don't really fancy releasing you for these games if you could, similar to how Ferguson used to treat Roy Keane and Ryan Giggs back in the day, going, do you know what, if you had a niggle around then, wouldn't be the worst idea in the world.
I wonder, although Scotland just do seem to have something going at the moment, don't they? Where I'm not sure.
They're just very difficult to break down. It's a very solid defensive base, and then they managed to nick goals here and there. I don't think they've been beating anybody convincingly over the last
No. I think, like, football wise, like, it's a tough group, but I mean, it's not an insurmountable one either. It's not one you're like the sheer point of the Nations League is that you're generally in there with teams whose results haven't been dissimilar in recent years, and that's how you end up with them. Ukraine coming down are a decent side. They were in pot 1 before, so of course, whereas Scotland have been more so improving. So as I said, there could have been better options, but in saying that, like, I don't think they're like hugely intimidating ones. And there does come a point, to be fair, in the broader debate about this, where you do have to start delivering results against decent sides to build confidence about the following year, which is the really important one, So I guess they are good games from that perspective to really coherently sort of trace the progress. And to be fair, I mean, I would say like Serbia and Portugal would be better, I think, than Ukraine and Scotland. So like I think it's a good barometer to see where you are relative to them.
Scotland is going to, like, the thing about the Nations League is the worry is that they're not necessarily attractive games. At least with Scotland, you know that this is going to spark interest to a degree. And with Ukraine, given where they've been, you know that it's going to spark a degree of interest as well. The Armenia might be a bit of a tougher.
Depends on the order of the games with that stuff as well.
True,
That's the thing. But no, the Scotland games are going to be. They're going to be huge events, just purely because I think, again, who knows what way things will go, but I think by the prospect of maybe, who knows, could it be home and away with Scotland in June, like they would be sort of quite festival in their sort of nature, I think.
Although Carling Nations Cup, I'm just going to
leave. But the whole point was that they didn't matter. You know, they didn't matter.
Nations Cup mattered. But we had a trophy.
But we had the games for the Euros campaign in 2016, where of course the scramble for tickets for the game in Celtic Park is where a lot of people realised that someone maybe wasn't the god that he may have been, and that was actually a source of massive tension, wasn't it? And then of course he opened up. John Delaney opened up on the Scottish FA, and that was part of a. Do you remember there was a bit of a skirmish arising from
you're
that?
not getting. We're going to make sure that you get the minimal amount of tickets for the home game.
But like, there was a real spark around those games, to be fair, and I think a lot of Ireland fans who won't be able to go to Ukraine and Armenia just for various reasons, won't fancy it. They'll put all their energies into going to Scotland. So I think whenever that game takes place, it'll be a massive one. Yeah,
as you mentioned there, we'll find out tomorrow the lay of the land with those. Football and off the ball, of course, is brought to you by Sky. Don't miss Tottenham versus Liverpool. Should it go ahead, touch wood, on Super Sunday live on Sky Sports. Liverpool in action, of course, at the moment. There is 16 minutes, just under 16 minutes to go at Anfield, where they continue to lead Newcastle by 2-1. Bobby Firmino has come on from Mo Salah in the past few minutes. I think Naby Keita is getting ready to make his return from injury. In fact, he's already in the pitch. So yeah, Liverpool making changes, but still to put this game to bed. And they're just into stoppage time at Stamford Bridge, where it's Chelsea 1, Everton 1, Chelsea taking the lead through Mason Mount, and it was Jared Braithwaite, the youngster for Everton, who equalised for them with 16 minutes to go. I hope you get a full time from Guy Swindles on that one very shortly indeed, but do join us after these.
Football on Off the Ball
with Sky. Don't miss Tottenham versus Liverpool on Super Sunday, live only on Sky Sports.
News Talk Breakfast.
On this morning's News Talk Breakfast, People Before Profit TD Paul Murphy argued that primary schools should shut their doors from this Friday.
We know that NPHET has made serious mistakes on schools, unfortunately. They were the ones, together with the government, that pushed the line that schools are safe when they very clearly and evidently weren't safe.
News Talk Breakfast with Ciara Kelly and Shane Coleman.
In association with AIR.
Weekday mornings at 7 on News Talk.
The O'Brien's Christmas wine sale is now on. Save up to 42% on over 200 wines from independent family wineries and well-known brands. Like half-price Monterreal Rioja Gran Reserva, now €16.95. Or Piper Heidsieck Champagne, now €39.95. Save €15. Pop in store or shop online at o'brienswine.ie. Available while stocks last. Please enjoy alcohol sensibly.
When my business grows up, I want it to be big and strong. There'll be hurdles along the way, but with the right payments partner, I'll grow a little
every day. Until before I know it, my little business will be all grown up. Elavon. Grow into the business you want to be. Check out our offers on elavon.ie. Elavon Financial Services DAC trading as Elavon Merchant Services is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Make everyone's Christmas merry and bright with the perfect gift. At CompuBee, we have a few bright ideas of our own to help you make this Christmas truly special. From iPad to AirPods, Apple Watch to MacBook, we have all the latest from Apple and the expertise to make sure you choose a gift they'll never forget. When you think Apple, think CompuBee, your local Apple expert. Visit your local store or compubee.com.
Happiness is opening an Ireland's Blue Book gift voucher on Christmas morning. A wonderful choice of Ireland's most romantic country houses, castles, historic hotels and restaurants. Visit irelandsbluebook.com to send a Blue Book gift voucher to someone you love this Christmas.
This Christmas, make a list. Premier League World Darts Championship.
Heineken Champions Cup.
Check everything twice.
VAR have a really close look at this.
Find out who's naughty.
It is absolute mayhem.
And who's nice.
He has been incredible.
Enjoy live action from the Premier League, the Heineken Champions Cup and the William Hill World Darts Championship with Now Sports and Sports Extra memberships from €10. Stream a spectacular season of sport with Now. 18 plus, content stream via internet, terms apply.
Guaranteed Irish business members are working hard to support jobs, communities and help our economy recover and prosper beyond COVID and Brexit.
DID Electrical has been delivering, installing and demonstrating the latest home appliances and technology to our local communities for over 50 years. DID Electrical's dedicated team of 400 people working across 23 stores and online at did.ie continue to support thousands of customers to find their perfect appliance and technology solutions at unbeatable prices. Let's start our recovery with guaranteedirish.ie. Altogether better.
As a world leader in heating and air conditioning technology, Daikin heat pumps harness renewable energy from the air and convert it to heat and hot water for your home, freeing you from carbon use and rising energy bills. Our highly efficient Daikin Ultherma 3 heat pumps will keep your home warm and comfortable all year round. Visit daikin.ie and start your journey today. That's DAIKIN. Daikin. Welcome renewable heat into your home.
At SuperValue, we want to share even more magic this Christmas by giving you savings off your shopping with our Real Rewards vouchers, which are available on our handy app. So no need to worry about leaving them at home. If you haven't already, download the Real Rewards app to get new vouchers every week until Christmas. Share the magic this Christmas with SuperValue.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch Leeds and Arsenal go head-to-head on Saturday Night Football. Live, only on Sky Sports.
Yeah, they're playing the 6th minute of added time at Stamford Bridge. It's Chelsea 1, Everton 1. This would be even very much a case of 2 points dropped for the hosts. Liverpool 2-1 up at home to Newcastle, watching their new owners, including Amanda Staveley, look on as Newcastle still try and chase this game, and they're not completely out of it, has to be said either. Liverpool have left the door open for Newcastle on a couple of occasions tonight. That one of the games that did go ahead, of course, Leicester versus Tottenham, was postponed earlier today. We got the news from the Premier League this evening, literally I think about a few minutes before we went on air, that 5 games now across the weekend have been called off, postponed as a result of COVID-19 infections. So of course the first one of those we knew about was going to be Brighton's game with Manchester United this weekend. That was the first really to fall victim, and then 4 others were postponed during the course of this evening. We found out that off were Southampton, Brentford, Watford, Crystal Palace, West Ham, Norwich and Everton versus Leicester City. So it's going to be a very nasty weekend, and it's going to be a very nasty few weeks in terms of trying to organise these games or finding spots for them again, because this thing is running rampant. And I thought there was a piece in The Athletic, and I know Martin Ziegler tweeted the figures earlier on, that only 68% of the players in the Premier League were double jabbed, which seems remarkably low. Yeah, no, it does. It's very hard to know what way it goes. I mean, I was trying to suss out, say maybe some of the people reporting over there, what the mood on the ground is, but it does seem to be changing, like on an ongoing basis. I know there was a feeling that maybe the Premier League had not necessarily slacked off, but they needed to go back maybe to the protocols like the Project Restart ones, and very naturally, I suppose, like a lot of people in their lives who are seeing what's happening now, naturally relaxed a small bit, and then this new wave takes hold, and all of a sudden it's becoming apparent that for sport, big sport to continue, and with so much at stake around it, that you need to go back to living in a way that you didn't probably want to be living. And that's around Christmas time and stuff. I'm sure that's a challenging one. Even like clubs probably have social events and stuff with players and whatever it might be, and it does appear like they're going to have to shut a lot of stuff down. But you'd imagine there's a massive determination, Richie, like to not lose these
these Christmas fixtures, which are so valuable in the context of the TV deal. But it seems like I think I heard briefly in the newsletter earlier, or the news round earlier on, that someone said there was a feel of March 2020 about it, and there is like a slight sense that it feels like even the way that rugby match, the Leinster Montpellier one, played itself out. It to me, it was like one of these. It was like those stories of time where it's like, oh no, it's going on
until it's not.
It's off.
Yeah,
and. Maybe they're just going to have to. Didn't Arsenal have the trial of the vaccine passport for fans in the stadiums and stuff as well, which is obviously, again, politically over there. It's a harder sell when a third of London isn't double jabbed. It's a tough one. I really like. I mean, it's an obvious point to make, but I really hoped we were beyond that. And but you would think that the previous principles will come to the fore, and they'll do whatever it takes to make sure the football goes ahead, even if that means some kind of restrictions that people don't want, even around stadiums and closed doors, which is just a nightmare. But I guess it's all relative in terms of what nightmare is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like football still going ahead is
yeah, no, of course, and you have to mind your language around that stuff, like for what's disastrous. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not disastrous. It's just that, again,
it's a thing that
everyone
happened.
got that adrenaline burst, probably even watching from afar, of fans coming back into stadiums last year. The FA Cup final and that, and you don't want to have to go backwards again. But it does feel like these are the decisions that are going to have to be part of the broader. But I mean, as you've sort of said, like, the stats amongst players are such, and probably the transmissibility, it appears, of this variant, I mean, it's going to run rampant through dressing rooms with some of the figures that you referenced. So I mean, it's not really very uplifting chat, is it? Any jokes or anything,
Just Chewy burn on it.
just give us something, I did I hear in the grapevine,
a few Christmas crackers.
Did I hear in the grapevine Johnny Ward might even be presenting on Sunday?
Who's letting that happen?
I heard that in the grapevine. I could be wrong, but I mean, I assume that's on the assumption there'll be live games to fill the air. Otherwise, it's like,
yeah. Well, if there's no live games, if Johnny suddenly plunges into a situation where, what was it, a couple hours before kickoff last night, the Watford and Burnley game at Turf Moor was called off. So we could get in a situation where Johnny's he's doing the pay per view, and he suddenly hears in his ear, you hear a pause from Johnny as someone's dissecting, the latest missive from Tommy Conlon in the Sindo, and Johnny's, you just hear a gulp, where it's suddenly this a vast expanse of 2 hours is stretched out in front of him, where he's going to have to freestyle. And like, Paul, what's the dump button situation out there like? Like, what's our league? Yeah, we're okay. It's work. All right, because like 2 hours of Johnny freestyling.
Well, it's like, let's just see like who's in the phone book. It's an hour and a half. Like, so coming up after the break, we'll have 90 minutes on Galway United, the season that was.
Well, why not?
Or a really long, like, the racing results will become a more integral part of the show than you could imagine. But again, it's sort of being a bit facetious about it, but I mean, like, so much of the Christmas schedule for a lot of people will be built around like these events, and whether it be in the flesh, trips, or just purely filling time, for people, and like, it is true, and but it does appear like the pace at which it's moving, they're going to have to face some kind of debate. I mean, there's going to be a lot of, I'm talking here, a newspaper person, a lot of space in newspapers that suddenly has to be filled.
Like, I think with tonight and the fact that they call off these 4 games on block and 48 hours, 72 hours away from the actual kickoff, I think they're trying to get ahead of this talk of a circuit break, and they weren't going to make the call. They weren't going to let it go until 2 hours before kickoff, like last night did with Burnley and Watford. They were going to go, right, this is the situation. It obviously ain't going to get better in the next 2 days. Let's just call this, reconvene next week and see how you are then. But there's certain teams, like Burnley, are going to have a backlog of games now because I think they've had 2 or 3 call-offs. Spurs are going to have a massive.
See, that's going to be the thing. Like, really, it's more like there's almost that sort of sporting integrity consideration there of like all these extra games, and again, you end up in that debate of what what classifies a valid reason for postponement.
Pardon me, Dan. I've just seen an absolute howitzer from Trent Alexander-Arnold to make it Liverpool 3, Newcastle 1. My enthusiasm for the quality of that strike probably overtook everything there, but it is Liverpool 3, Newcastle 1. Trent Alexander-Arnold has beaten Martin Dubravka. All ends up, and this game is now completely beyond Newcastle. While we're here, let's get the full time from Stamford Bridge. We're going to take in a replay of this one in studio, but it is full time at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea versus Everton. There for us was Guy Swindles.
Chelsea 1, Everton 1. Chelsea utterly dominant against the very youthful and experienced Everton side because of injuries and illness, but they found a way to get back into this match and in the end deserved their point. First half, all Chelsea. Mount had 3 chances, the best of the lot fell to Reece James, but he couldn't take it. Jordan Pickford in inspired form all night. Pickford it was as well who pulled off 3 blinding saves in the second half. Nothing he could do though when finally Mason Mount did give Chelsea the lead in the 69th minute. But that only lasted 5 minutes, and with their first proper shot on target, Branthwaite bundled in Gordon's free kick and Everton were level. After that, they just held Chelsea at arm's length. Chelsea 1, Everton 1.
Yeah, Chelsea 1, Everton 1, 2 points dropped very much, and Benitez, he loves these situations. Like, back against,
of course, back at Chelsea as well. Like, I mean, not exactly a beloved figure in the ground, you know, for that game in terms of that. But that's probably, I don't know. Like, does it steady the ship for him a bit? I'm not sure. Like, you know, I don't think it does. But I mean, at least it takes the heat out of the situation a small bit. I mean, probably more relevant is Chelsea just dropping points again.
Chelsea conceding goals for fun, where they went through the first 12 games, I think, and they conceded 4, and they're now heading towards that in the last 4 games alone.
Yeah, and like, I suppose again, the sort of the narrative, as they say, like it flips when suddenly results aren't great. But now there's a lot of discussion around, well, actually that Chelsea rearguard, you know, you have the Chilwell injury, and then you look at the age and consistency of other players, and you're thinking, oh, this is a real problem. Whereas I think, and I mean, I tipped Chelsea to win the league back in August. You know, you think you would have been talking about them as quite a solid proposition. You know, so it's sort of how that sort of debate can sort of.
If I was Noel Edmonds, I'd have the banker on the phone now, Dan, going, "Are you sure you don't want to trade that in?
Trade that in for whoever." I know. I just see Liverpool score a goal, so I'm going to instinctively change my view towards them. But no, they just suddenly, like, I suppose with every Chelsea manager, like, you couldn't continue that honeymoon forever in the sense that you're going to have a blip somewhere. But this is a test. Like, I mean, they've dropped points in a couple of games. And I mean, at a home as well. Yeah. You know, it's one thing to maybe drop points away to Burnley and away to Everton, but there's enough cause for concern there for sure.
Liverpool getting players back. James Milner's just come on the pitch. Naby Keita's fit again. Roberto Firmino's fit again, Dan.
Well, we'll see what happens to the AFCON as well, which is probably like,
maybe.
Well, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's been caught up in this debate as well. And imagine
they seem determined to press ahead with that. By the way,
they should. Yeah, no, they seem determined to be. And see, in a way, like, it's the classic one about a tournament in one country. Like, you get everyone over into that bubble and you just deal with it from within that. Is that easier to manage than Champions League games and stuff flying around the continent? You know?
Yeah. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure as always.
It has been, Richie.
Yeah, I'll let you not tweet Bo's transfer news that makes me sad. Tweet about people coming to the club, for God's sake.
I think there'll be some players coming to Bo's in due course.
You need them.
Well, I mean, you actually need them to fill the team.
We've got a squad of about 5 at the minute.
No, I have more than that. So
it's at least
they'll be there
11,
eventually. At least 11,
yeah. But yeah, it's there we go. Dan McDonnell, the Irish Independent. Keep an eye on Dan's Twitter feed. He's breaking stories literally as we speak, live in studios. Liverpool press for a 4th. We've had the full time from Chelsea. We'll have the full time from Newcastle after these.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Don't miss Tottenham versus Liverpool on Super Sunday. Live only on